A young man stumbles upon a mysterious glowing artifact buried deep in the forest, its surface etched with strange pulsing symbols. As he touches it, whispers fill his mind, showing glimpses of distant worlds and long-forgotten battles. The artifact's power begins to disrupt his life, drawing the attention of a shadowy organization desperate to claim it. What he uncovers about its origins could change the course of history, or destroy it entirely. The morning sunlight streamed through the canopy of trees, dappling the forest floor with patches of gold. Liam Carter adjusted his worn gloves, the leather cracked from years of use, and sighed. Clearing out his late father's land was supposed to bring him peace, but so far it had only stirred up memories he wasn't ready to face. The shovel struck something solid. Not the dull clunk of rock or root. This was different. Liam frowned and knelt, brushing away the loose dirt. At first it looked like metal, but as more of the object came into view, a faint glow began to emanate from its surface. His breath caught in his throat. The object was smooth, almost spherical, with silver veins that pulsed faintly, as though alive. Symbols he couldn't recognize were etched along its surface, faintly glowing with an otherworldly light. It didn't belong here, or anywhere, for that matter. "What the hell is this?" Liam muttered, reaching out hesitantly. The moment his fingers touched it, a shiver ran up his spine. The air around him felt heavier, charged with an energy that prickled at his skin. He pulled back, his heart pounding, but the glow seemed to intensify as though the object had been waiting for him. Then came the whisper. Soft, almost imperceptible, like the wind brushing through leaves. But it was no natural sound. It was inside his head. Words, indistinct but pressing, like a distant voice trying to be heard. "Liam, what are you doing?" He jolted and spun around. Zoe Hart, his childhood friend and neighbor, was standing a few feet away, hands on her hips. Her expression flickered between concern and curiosity. "Found something weird," Liam said, struggling to keep his voice steady. He quickly moved to block her view of the glowing object. Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Weird, like an old coin? Or weird, like you're about to summon aliens?" "Definitely not a coin," Liam muttered, slipping the object into his backpack before she could get a closer look. The warmth of it against his back was unsettling. "What's going on with you?" Zoe pressed. "You've been out here every day since, well, you know." Her tone softened. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Since his father passed, the forest had become Liam's refuge. "I'm fine," Liam said, a little too quickly. "Just clearing the land, like Dad wanted." He slung the backpack over his shoulder. "Let's head back." But as they walked back toward the house, the weight of the artifact pressed against him, not just physically, but mentally. The whispers grew louder with every step, incomprehensible yet insistent, like a forgotten memory clawing its way to the surface. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, Liam was certain of one thing. Whatever he had found, it wasn't just old or strange. It was dangerous. And it had been waiting for him. The old attic creaked under Liam's weight as he climbed the narrow wooden ladder, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Dust hung in the air, illuminated by slivers of sunlight streaming through the cracks in the roof. This place hadn't been touched in years, not since his father's declining health forced the family to abandon it as a storage space. But something was pulling him here today, a nagging feeling he couldn't ignore. Liam dropped his backpack onto an old chest and began rummaging through the clutter. Boxes labeled with fading markers contained his father's military mementos, old books, and the occasional family relic. He paused when his fingers brushed a battered leather-bound journal, the kind his father had always kept by his side. It wasn't his father's. The initials CC were embossed on the front. Liam's grandfather, Calvin Carter, a man Liam had only known through stories of bravery during World War II. Flipping through the pages, Liam saw sketches, scribbled notes, and even a pressed flower or two. But one entry stopped him cold. March 1944. We found it today. The thing none of us were prepared for. It glowed like fire, its energy coursing through the room. If it falls into the wrong hands, it won't just destroy armies. It could destroy everything. We buried it in the forest. It must never be found." Liam's hands trembled as he reread the passage. His heart pounded in his chest. There was no mistaking it. The glowing object he had found in the woods wasn't just an ordinary artifact. His grandfather had found it first, decades ago. "Liam, what's taking so long?" Zoe's voice echoed from below. "Just give me a minute," Liam called back, quickly closing the journal and tucking it into his bag. He scanned the rest of the attic, hoping for more clues, but the cluttered space seemed to swallow the secrets whole. As he climbed back down, Zoe was waiting, arms crossed. "What's in the bag now?" she asked, eyeing him suspiciously. "Just an old journal. Nothing big?" he said, avoiding her gaze. Zoe squinted. "That look on your face says it's definitely something big." "It's nothing," he repeated, though the weight of the artifact in the journal pressed against him like a physical burden. He wasn't ready to share, couldn't share, not yet. Zoe sighed, but didn't press further. "Fine. Just remember, you don't have to keep everything bottled up, okay? I'm here." Liam nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He felt the pull of the forest again, as though the artifact itself was calling him back. His grandfather's warning echoed in his mind. It must never be found. That night, Liam sat in his room with the journal and the artifact on the desk before him. The orb seemed to hum faintly, its symbols glowing softly in the darkened room. Liam opened the journal again, reading further. April 1944. We barely escaped with our lives. The Nazis had been experimenting on it, trying to harness its energy to win the war. But the artifact doesn't obey. It consumes. If you hold it too long, you hear voices, see things that aren't there. I don't know how much longer we can keep this hidden." Liam looked at the artifact, a cold sweat forming on his brow. The whispers had already begun, faint but unmistakable, like shadows moving in the corners of his mind. What had his grandfather meant by it consumes? His fingers hovered over the orb. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, but he couldn't resist. Slowly, he placed his hand on its surface. A rush of images exploded in his mind. Soldiers in battle, explosions ripping through the sky, and his grandfather, young and terrified, holding the same glowing artifact. It was as if time itself had folded inward, showing him events he wasn't supposed to see. He yanked his hand back, gasping for air. The artifact pulsed brighter, the whispers growing louder, sharper. Then, just as suddenly, everything went still. The room was silent except for his ragged breathing. Liam stared at the artifact, his mind racing. This wasn't just an artifact, it was a weapon, and whatever his grandfather had done to keep it hidden had worked, until now. Liam flips to the last page of the journal, where his grandfather's final entry reads, "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. I did everything I could, but I've only delayed the inevitable. If it's found again, they will come for it." The next morning, Liam woke to the sound of heavy footsteps outside his front door. He sat up, groggy, the events of the previous night swirling in his mind like fragments of a dream. But the artifact's faint glow in his backpack was a stark reminder that it had all been real. A sharp knock startled him. Zoe's voice called out, "Liam, open up! It's important!" He stumbled to the door and opened it to find Zoe standing with a tall, grizzled man in his 60s. His face was weathered, with a scar cutting across his right cheek, and his piercing gray eyes seemed to scrutinize Liam in an instant. "Who's this?" Liam asked, eyeing the stranger. "Marcus Reed," the man said curtly. "We need to talk about what you found." Liam's stomach tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus stepped forward, unfazed by Liam's attempt to act innocent. "The artifact. I can feel its energy. You've already found it, haven't you?" Liam exchanged a nervous glance with Zoe. "How do you know about it?" Marcus sighed, his voice heavy with years of regret. "Because I was there when it was buried. Your grandfather and I were part of the same unit during the war. We made a pact to hide it forever. If it's resurfaced now, you're in danger." Liam froze. "You knew my grandfather?" "Calvin Carter saved my life more times than I can count, Marcus said, his expression softening for a moment. "But this thing you've dug up, it destroyed men far stronger than us. If you don't get rid of it, it will destroy you too." Zoe stepped in, her arms crossed. Wait, hold on. You're saying this thing has been in the ground for decades and now it's suddenly a threat? Why?" Marcus glanced at her, then back to Liam. "Because they know it's been found." Liam frowned. "Who's they?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "The same people who wanted it during the war. Descendants of Nazi scientists, scavengers, and worse, people who think they can control its power. They've been searching for it ever since we buried it, and if they find out you have it, they'll stop at nothing to take it." Zoe shook her head in disbelief. "You expect us to believe that after 70-something years, these people are still hunting for some glowing rock?" "It's not just a glowing rock," Marcus snapped, his voice sharp. "That artifact is the key to something much bigger, something that shouldn't exist." Liam's thoughts raced. The journal's warnings, the visions, the whispers, all of it pointed to one conclusion. Marcus was telling the truth. But the man's presence only raised more questions. "Why now?" Liam asked. "Why would it start doing whatever it's doing after all this time?" Marcus's eyes darkened. "Because you woke it up." The words hit Liam like a punch to the gut. He had thought finding the artifact was an accident, but now it felt like something deliberate, something unavoidable. "Look," Marcus continued, his tone softening slightly, "I know this is a lot to take in, but you don't have time to think it over. They'll come for you soon. We need to destroy it before it's too late." "Destroy it?" Liam asked, his voice rising. "How? And what if we're wrong? What if there's a reason my grandfather wanted it hidden, not destroyed?" Marcus's face hardened. "I don't have all the answers, but I do know this. Every time someone tries to use that thing, people die." Liam's hand instinctively tightened around the strap of his backpack. "What happens if we don't destroy it?" Marcus hesitated, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Then history repeats itself." Liam sat alone in his father's old study, the journal and artifact laid out before him. The room felt colder than usual, the shadows longer and darker. Marcus's warnings replayed in his mind, but he couldn't shake the feeling that destroying the artifact might not be the right answer. He flipped through the journal again, stopping on a sketch his grandfather had drawn of the artifact. Beneath it, scrawled in bold letters, were the words, "It consumes, but it also reveals." "What does that mean?" Liam muttered to himself. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Zoe peeked her head into the room. "Hey, you okay?" Liam nodded, though his tense posture said otherwise. "Marcus is right about one thing. This thing isn't just a glowing rock." Zoe entered, pulling up a chair beside him. "So, what now?" "I don't know," Liam admitted. "Destroying it feels wrong. If my grandfather went to such lengths to hide it, maybe there's more to it than Marcus is telling us." Zoe glanced at the artifact, her brow furrowed. "You're hearing them, aren't you? The whispers." Liam's eyes widened. "How do you know about that?" Zoe gave him a grim smile. "You mumbled something earlier, about voices. Liam, what if this thing isn't just dangerous? What if it's trying to tell you something?" Liam didn't have an answer, but, deep down, he knew she was right. The artifact wasn't just reacting, it was communicating. As the two sat in uneasy silence, the artifact suddenly flared with a blinding light, its hum growing louder and more insistent. Both Liam and Zoe jumped to their feet as the whispers became a deafening roar. Then, just as quickly as it started, the light vanished. In the eerie stillness, Liam realized something chilling. The artifact wasn't just waking up, it was calling to someone, and they were coming. Liam's hands shook as he zipped up his backpack, the artifact's warmth pulsing faintly through the fabric. Across the room, Zoe paced, her nervous energy filling the otherwise quiet house. "Who is it calling to?" she asked, glancing back at Liam. Marcus seemed convinced someone, or something, was going to show up. "I don't know," Liam admitted, hoisting the backpack onto his shoulder, "but I'm not waiting around to find out." The door creaked open and Marcus stepped in, his expression grim. "We don't have much time." "Time for what?" Zoe asked, stopping mid-stride. To leave, Marcus said, motioning for them to follow. They're already on their way. The old truck rattled as Marcus drove them out of town, its headlights cutting through the dense fog that had settled over the road. Liam sat in the passenger seat, the artifact feeling heavier with each passing mile. Zoe sat in the back, clutching her knees, her usual humor replaced by a tense silence. "Where are we going?" Liam asked, breaking the quiet. "To a place where your grandfather and I first realized what we were dealing with," Marcus replied. "An abandoned site in the woods. It was meant to be a safe haven, but it became something else." Liam furrowed his brow. "What happened there?" Marcus hesitated, his knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. "We thought we could study it, control it, but the artifact doesn't work that way. It changes people." Zoe leaned forward from the back seat. "Changes them how?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "The whispers. They get louder the longer you're near it. They feed off your fears, your guilt. Most of the men started losing their grip on reality. Some turned on each other. That's when your grandfather decided to bury it. We hoped it would stay forgotten. But it didn't," Liam said quietly, his stomach sinking. Marcus nodded grimly. "No, and now it's too late to bury it again." The truck stopped at the edge of the forest, the headlights illuminating a moss-covered steel door hidden beneath the trees. Marcus led the way, pulling a rusted key from his pocket and unlocking the door with a loud screech. Inside, the bunker smelled of damp earth and rust. The walls were lined with old equipment, radios, faded maps, and crates stamped with military insignias. It was like stepping into a time capsule from 1944. "This is where we made our stand," Marcus said, his voice heavy with memory. "Your grandfather believed the artifact held answers, but he also knew the cost of those answers." Liam set the backpack down on an old table, the artifact's glow illuminating the room in soft pulses. He pulled out his grandfather's journal and flipped to a page marked with a pressed leaf. "The artifact reveals truths, but only to those willing to face their darkest memories. It consumes the unworthy. To survive it, you must endure yourself." "What does that mean?" Liam asked, his voice unsteady. "It means the artifact doesn't just show you visions," Marcus said. "It forces you to relive them. Every mistake, every regret, every fear, it becomes real." Zoe frowned. "That's why you said it changes people." Marcus nodded. "Your grandfather called it a test, but I don't think anyone can pass it." As they examined the bunker, the artifact began to glow brighter, its hum filling the space. Liam's vision blurred, and suddenly he was no longer in the bunker. He was standing in the middle of a battlefield. Explosions tore through the air, and the shouts of soldiers rang in his ears. He turned and saw his grandfather, young, strong, and terrified, holding the artifact in his hands. Calvin Carter shouted orders to his men, but his gaze was fixed on the glowing orb, his face etched with fear. "Grandpa?" Liam whispered, though he knew his voice couldn't reach him. Calvin's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto Liam's. It was impossible. This was a memory, not reality, but Calvin stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Liam, you shouldn't be here." The words sent a chill down Liam's spine. He stumbled backward, the battlefield dissolving into mist. He blinked, and he was back in the bunker, Zoe shaking his shoulder. "Liam, what just happened?" she asked, her voice laced with panic. He looked down at the artifact, its glow fading. I saw him, my grandfather. He spoke to me." Marcus's face darkened. "The artifact is trying to pull you in. It knows who you are, who your grandfather was." Liam shook his head. "He said I shouldn't be here." "What does that mean?" "It means the artifact knows you're close to unlocking its secrets," Marcus said, "and it's warning you." Before Liam could process Marcus's words, a loud noise echoed from outside the bunker. Marcus froze, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm. "They found us," he whispered. Liam's heart raced as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Whoever was out there wasn't coming to talk. The metallic creak of the bunker door sent chills down Liam's spine. He pressed himself against the wall, the artifact glowing faintly in his backpack. Zoe crouched behind a rusted crate, her eyes wide with fear. Marcus motioned for them to stay quiet, his sidearm raised as the door swung open. Two figures stepped inside, their silhouettes sharp against the dim light of the forest outside. They were dressed in modern tactical gear, but their insignias were unfamiliar, neither military nor police. One of them carried a sleek black rifle, the other held a tablet, its screen glowing as they scanned the room. "They're here," one of them muttered in German, their voice low and precise. Marcus fired a single shot, the loud crack echoing in the bunker. The men dove for cover, returning fire. Bullets ricocheted off the walls and Liam ducked lower, his heart pounding in his chest. "Run!" Marcus barked. "Get out of here now!" Liam hesitated, but Zoe grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the back of the bunker. There was another door, smaller and partially hidden behind stacks of old crates. They shoved it open and stumbled into a dark, narrow tunnel. "What about Marcus?" Liam whispered, his voice shaking. "He knows what he's doing," Zoe said, though her expression betrayed her doubt. "We need to move." The tunnel twisted and turned, the air growing colder with each step. Liam's mind raced as they ran. Who were those men? And how had they found the bunker so quickly? Zoe finally stopped, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. "We need a plan," she said. "We can't just keep running." Liam nodded, though his thoughts were still scattered. He pulled out his grandfather's journal, flipping to the pages he hadn't yet read. His eyes scanned the notes, looking for anything that could help them understand what they were up against. One passage stood out. April 1944. The artifact's power is not unique. The Nazis were creating replicas, imperfect, unstable, but deadly. They believed the original could unlock their full potential. If they had succeeded, the war would have ended in fire. Liam's stomach churned. "They were trying to copy it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The artifact. The Nazis wanted to use it as a weapon." Zoe frowned. "But they didn't succeed, right? That's why your grandfather and Marcus buried it." "Maybe," Liam said. "But what if the people after it now are trying to finish what the Nazis started?" Zoe shook her head. "This just keeps getting worse." The faint hum of the artifact suddenly grew louder, and Liam felt its warmth through the fabric of his backpack. It was reacting to something, but what? A sudden noise behind them made both of them jump. Marcus emerged from the shadows, blood staining his sleeve. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were sharp. "They're gone," he said, his voice low. "For now." "Are you okay?" Zoe asked, eyeing the blood. "It's just a scratch," Marcus said dismissively. He gestured for them to follow him deeper into the tunnel. "We're not safe here. There's a safe house nearby where we can regroup." As they walked, Liam handed Marcus the journal. "My grandfather wrote about the Nazis trying to replicate the artifact. Did you know about that?" Marcus's expression darkened. "I did. We found their lab back in 1944. Machines everywhere, experiments half finished. It was horrifying. The replicas they made, they were unstable, but they worked. Briefly." Liam swallowed hard. "What happened to the lab?" "We destroyed it," Marcus said. "At least we thought we did. But if these men are after the artifact, it means someone kept the knowledge alive." "Who are they?" Zoe asked. "They're not military, are they?" "No," Marcus said grimly. "They're part of an old network, descendants of the scientists who worked for the Nazis. They've spent decades trying to recover what was lost. And now that the artifact is awake, they won't stop until they have it." Liam's chest tightened. "What happens if they get it?" Marcus stopped walking and turned to face them, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger. "If they get it, history will repeat itself. But this time, there won't be anyone left to stop them." The safe house was a small, nondescript cabin hidden deep in the forest. Inside, Marcus set up a map on the table, marking locations with quick, decisive movements. "This is where we are," he said, pointing to a spot in the middle of the forest. "And this is where the Nazi lab was. If we're going to stop them, we need to go back there and find out what they left behind." "Go back?" Zoe asked, incredulous. "You just said they're after us, and now you want to walk into one of their old sites?" Marcus nodded. If they've rebuilt their operation, the lab will hold the answers we need. We can't afford to stay on the run forever. Liam hesitated. The idea of walking into an old Nazi lab, possibly crawling with enemies, made his stomach turn. But he knew Marcus was right. The journal, the artifact, and the men who attacked the bunker all pointed to one truth. The past wasn't finished with them yet. As they planned their next move, the artifact suddenly flared with light, casting shadows across the room. Liam froze as a voice, clear and distinct, echoed in his mind. "It's time to choose." The journey to the remnants of the Nazi lab was harrowing. The dense forest pressed in on all sides, and the group moved cautiously, knowing they were being hunted. The artifact hummed intermittently in Liam's backpack, its energy growing more erratic as they neared their destination. When they arrived, the lab was barely recognizable, a crumbling ruin hidden beneath layers of moss and time. But as they stepped inside, the remnants of twisted metal and shattered glass hinted at the horrors that had once taken place. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice grave. "This is where it all started." Liam placed the artifact on a rusted table in the center of the room. Its glow illuminated the walls, revealing faded blueprints and scribbled equations. Zoe examined a diagram pinned to the wall, her expression darkening. "This looks like they were trying to open something. A portal?" Marcus nodded. "The artifact isn't just a weapon. It's a key. The Nazis believed it could open a gateway to an endless energy source, a force they thought would make them invincible." "And did it work?" Liam asked, though he feared the answer. "Not the way they hoped," Marcus replied. "The energy was uncontrollable. It consumed everything in its path." As they sifted through the lab's remains, the sound of footsteps echoed from the entrance. Liam turned, his heart racing, as armed figures emerged from the shadows. The leader of the group, a man with icy eyes and an air of authority, stepped forward. "Thank you for leading us here," he said, his German accent sharp. "You've done the hard work for us." Marcus raised his weapon, but the man's team was faster, disarming him in seconds. The leader smiled coldly, turning his gaze to Liam. "The artifact belongs to us. It always has." "No," Liam said, stepping between the man and the artifact. "You don't understand what it can do. It's dangerous." "That's why we need it," the man replied. "You think we'll repeat the mistakes of the past? No. This time, we'll control it." The artifact began to hum louder, its glow intensifying. Liam glanced back at it, the symbols on its surface shifting and moving. He felt a surge of energy, a pull toward the object, as if it was responding to his fear and determination. Marcus took the opportunity to lunge at one of the guards, wresting a weapon free. Chaos erupted as Zoe grabbed a piece of metal from the floor and swung it at another guard. In the melee, Liam's hand brushed the artifact. The world around him dissolved. Liam found himself standing in a void, surrounded by shifting images of the past. He saw his grandfather burying the artifact, his face lined with anguish. He saw the experiments in the Nazi lab, the destruction unleashed when the artifact was first activated, and then he saw himself, standing in the forest holding the artifact for the first time. A voice echoed in his mind. "You must decide. Power or peace. Creation or destruction." Liam's vision shifted again, showing a world ravaged by war, flames consuming cities as the artifact pulsed in the hands of faceless figures. He felt the weight of its power, its potential to reshape reality. "I don't want this," he shouted into the void. "I don't want any of this." The voice softened. "Then let it go." Liam jolted back to reality as the artifact flared with blinding light. The leader of the shadowy group screamed, reaching for it, but Liam grabbed the orb, his body trembling with its energy. "What are you doing?" Marcus shouted. "I'm ending this," Liam said, his voice steady. "It can't fall into anyone's hands. Not theirs, not ours." Zoe's eyes widened. "Liam, wait. There might be another way." But Liam knew there wasn't. He felt the artifact's power coursing through him, its whispers louder than ever. He focused all his will on one thought: destruction. The artifact's light grew brighter, the hum rising to a deafening roar. The armed men shielded their eyes as the orb began to crack, its energy spilling out in waves. "Liam, no!" Zoe screamed, but it was too late. With one final surge of light, the artifact shattered, its energy imploding in a blinding flash. The force knocked everyone to the ground, and then... silence. Liam opened his eyes to find the lab in ruins. The artifact was gone, its power extinguished. The leader and his men lay unconscious, their weapons scattered. Marcus groaned as he pushed himself up, his face a mix of relief and grief. "You did it," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "You stopped it." Liam sat up, his body aching but intact. Zoe rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "You're alive," she whispered, hugging him tightly. The artifact's whispers were gone, replaced by a heavy silence. Liam felt a strange emptiness, but also a sense of peace. The burden had been lifted, not just from him, but from the world. Weeks later, Liam stood in his father's study, the journal open on the desk before him. He had donated the remnants of the lab and the journal to a museum, ensuring his grandfather's story, and the artifact's dark history, would never be forgotten. As he closed the journal, Zoe entered the room, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You okay?" she asked. Liam nodded. "I think so. It's over." But deep down, he knew the lessons of the artifact would stay with him forever. Some things were too powerful to control, and some sacrifices were necessary to protect the future. Outside, the forest was quiet, the sunlight filtering through the trees. For the first time in weeks, Liam felt free. Liam's journey came to an end, not with the triumph of wielding immense power, but with the realization that true strength lies in sacrifice and responsibility. By destroying the artifact, he not only protected his family but also saved the world from a danger that could have changed history forever. The whispers, the haunting visions, and the burden of the artifact were gone, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. As Liam, Zoe, and Marcus walk away from the ruins, their bonds strengthened by the trials they faced, they carry with them a lesson that will resonate forever. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some powers are too dangerous to control. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey into the unknown, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more spine-chilling adventures. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Liam's shoes? And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss another story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Join us for the next chapter, where new mysteries await.